At some point, you're likely to have a learner ask for extended test time or to take a test at a different time. This can be easily accomplished using a user or group override. To create an override, first open the quiz itself, then click the More menu. At the top of the More menu, select Overrides. On the Overrides page, you can select to create either a user override or a group override. To use a group override, you have to have already created the groups off of the participants page in your course. As a special note to instructors in K-12 and higher education environments, some instructors opt to add all of their learners who have an accommodation for extended test time into a singular group, so that they can simply give a group override instead of a user override on each of their quizzes. If you give that group a name that indicates the students in that group have some sort of impairment or disability, you are very likely running afoul of multiple federal laws. So please be mindful if you are using this feature for that purpose. In our example, let's create a user override for a learner. To do that, I'll begin by clicking the Add User Override button. On the next page, I'll need to select the user that I'm adding the override for, and I can actually select multiple users. In this case, we'll pick our stock demo user. After selecting the user or users who will receive this override, you'll have to set new parameters for the quiz for those individuals. This includes setting a new open and close date, if enabled, or a new time limit, if enabled. You can also require a password or change the number of attempts that learner has. After you create your override, you'll be taken back to the override screen. From here, you can see all users and groups that have been given an override for this quiz. We also want to include a special note based off of a common question that we sometimes receive that is caused by user overrides. In a quiz, it's possible to set a close date and time. In other words, when the quiz is no longer available to learners to be able to create an attempt. The close quiz date and time also affects review options within the course. So if you've set the review options to only show your learners how they did and what their grades are after the quiz is closed, you may run into a confusing situation if you use a user override. In this example, my quiz is set to close on July 31st at 10 a.m. However, my user override doesn't close the quiz for that learner until December 31st at 10 a.m. The review option settings will always default to the later close date and time for the quiz. So while this quiz is configured to close on July 31st at 10 a.m., my user override won't close for that learner until December 31st at 10 a.m. That means that all of my learners will not be able to see their attempt or their grades until December 31st at 10 a.m. when the quiz close date and time is met for the user override. Now, this is obviously an exaggerated example, but if you're closing a quiz for all of your learners on Friday at 5 p.m. and you have a user with extended time or extenuating circumstances whose quiz does not close until Saturday at 5 p.m., then Saturday at 5 p.m. is when all the users will be able to see their grades and their attempt.